Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Quite the day in the VCT yesterday with the reigning world champions, technically of Evil Geniuses, taking down the Masters Madrid champions in Sentinels in a remarkable turn of events. This genuinely puts Sentinels in a position where qualifying for the playoffs, and therefore qualifying for Shanghai, is now increasingly unlikely. What is going on with Sentinels? Why have they fallen off so considerably over the last couple of weeks? Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, VALORANT have actually said themselves that split is a bit of a problem. There's a major exploit on the map at the moment. Few exploits they need to fix here actually. Cypher will still be available to play, but split will be removed from the map pools right now going forward. This is the bug in question. You guys might have seen this going around, that it's possible to get up here at the moment. There's even a way to do this as well with a sage wall, so that's something to look at as well. But it's an interesting spot, and it's been causing lots of discussion over the last couple of days. This is the exploit as to why split is being disabled. Of course, you're not going to see the pros do this because they know that it's, not really intended, not really allowed, but still, for regular players, this has now been disabled. Now, there's been lots of discussion over the last few days on, let's just say, trash talk or, hate or bad manners or kicking, people while they're down from the community. And, I can understand the discussion on this because Demon 1 has been going through it the last couple of days. Obviously, his individual level has somewhat regressed. His performance on the Rays was, very poor when they lost that series to Leviathan the other day. And Katarina, his fiance, has actually been talking a lot about this. I'm not sure what Katarina's going through. I'm wishing the best for her because she's talking about how she's losing bone, she's in a lot of pain. So, I really wish the best for her because, we've seen this type of stuff before and it can be very detrimental to players that are obviously have those close personal relationships. And, so this is why it's difficult, isn't it? Because Demon 1's having a difficult time in the server and presumably out of the server as well. And, talking about why he's, dyeing his hair and stuff like this as well. But at the end of the day, when you're Demon 1, a player like that, and, he's got the personality that he does, he stepped into that kind of villain role, right? Like, he talked the trash and he was willing to take it back. And I think you've got to kind of accept what comes with the course as a result of that. My feeling is always that when you've got any sort of sport, inevitably, if the sport is actually going to be reasonably large and successful and people are going to talk about it, there's going to be toxic people. There's going to be haters. There's going to be, people who don't like you for whatever reason. And I think that's just kind of how it goes. Now, sure, should people be more careful what they say on social media and the implications it should have? Probably yes. But at the same time, this type of stuff is always going to happen. Now, there is a point to be made that maybe the broadcast itself shouldn't lean into this type of stuff. And I think this is what Chet has to say on the FNS thing. Now, I don't think FNS really took this to heart. I think he thought it was kind of funny. But I will say that it was interesting that they kind of brought up FNS's stats. I'll show the clip for you guys in a second. But as Chet says, NRG coach, Riot Games media should be ashamed of themselves too, always trying to push players to be toxic and push narratives that don't exist organically. Disappointing these things are encouraged. So that is interesting. Now, these narratives and stuff, they're going to exist anyway, naturally. Fans are going to talk about stuff. And actually, Roy made an interesting point on this the other day that, as a player, obviously people are not so happy because, okay, this discussion was had the other day from NRG Williers, who basically said, Demon 1, TenZ, yay, they obviously have a lot of fans because people bandwagon their success, but on their downfall, then, people, are merciless, taunting them and all this other stuff. Happens in every sport. I don't think you're ever getting away from it, to be honest. And as a player, I think you realize, obviously you don't like it when it's happening to you, but Roy's point really was, at the end of the day, it's an entertainment sport, and the profitability of VALORANT depends on engagement, and, maybe Riot, in the way that they do things, encourage that engagement in certain extent. And remember, that's not always good engagement, and sometimes it's negative engagement, but it is nonetheless engagement. And talking points for the community are important in, maintaining the storylines going forward. So, it basically says that it's a healthy and necessary thing for the game, although it may not always seem that way. This was the FNS clip, by the way. So, of course, NRG MIBR last night, and they brought up the NRG MIBR series from last year when MIBR took them down 2-1, and then they brought up on the screen here FNS's stats from the series. Here he is, 4-15, and kind of just putting him through it. And FNS is like, wow, what do you mean? Why are we doing this? Why are they roasting me? They know that I'm watching the stream. It was a whole year ago now. And to be honest, okay, putting his stats up on the stream was probably unnecessary, given that he's not even a player anymore, right? Like, talking about the series and the match they had before is totally fair and justified. But the fact that FNS isn't even a player anymore, like, he's not even in the league, it's not like they're talking about a current player that's still on NRG that is therefore, you know, needs to perform better this year than they did previously, but they're just roasting FNS kind of for no reason. So I don't think FNS, you know, felt massively disrespected by this, but I understand why this was deemed to maybe be rather unfair, and yeah, as FNS, the only way Riot can make it up to me is by sending me the spinning spike. That disrespect was unreal. So we've got lots to say on the Pacific as well. Just quickly here, Paper X, well, this was actually the first series, wasn't it? Team Secret did take down Detonation Gaming. We saw that yesterday. The sunset was 9-0. It actually ended 12-0, but DFM won the pistol. So fair play. And then it was 13-2. So Team Secret go on. Honestly, Team Secret, they probably have a chance, well, they always have a chance, to make it to Shanghai, because the Pacific is, well, it's kind of all over the place. EMEA, I have no idea how to call right now. Like, I have no clue who is qualifying for Shanghai from EMEA. In the Pacific, I can give you guys a better guess. I mean, on paper, you're thinking DRX, you're thinking Paper X, and you're thinking probably Gen.G, and that seems plausible, but maybe Team Secret can get in there. Global Esports, I don't think will. They lost, you know, series yesterday to Paper X that wasn't especially pretty. 13-4, 13-7 on their pick on the Icebox. So pretty ugly. Global Esports still can't really put pieces together. Big bounce back from Paper X after their defeat relatively recently. But let's get into the Americas, because firstly, we do have that NRG MIBR series that was, you know, not pretty. It's, well, we talked about it yesterday, why the Brazilian scene has been struggling to some extent. And yeah, NRG slapped them around. Demon 1 still didn't have his greatest performance, and that kind of leans into what we discussed earlier on today. But Victor and Ethan and, you know, the rest of the guys played well enough. 13-9 on MLBR's pick, and then the Breeze was more comfortable. 13-3, pretty dominant in the end on the Breeze. Ethan was 19-6 here. So, you know, fair play to NRG. They bounced back, and honestly, that puts NRG in pretty much a guaranteed position to make it to the playoffs. I don't think they'll have any concerns at this point now, and we'll see in a few minutes' time what this looks like for Sentinels, because this was a tweet the other day. We talked about it, and as Potter said, never lost to Kaplan, never lost to John QT or to Sentinels. Don't plan on starting now. See y'all next week, she said. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But Sentinels are best team in the world, although clearly not at the moment. And Evil Geniuses have been struggling. But if there's anyone that you don't want to doubt in the competitive Valorant scene, it is Potter and what she is capable of as a coach of this team, because this was a remarkable result in this series. And even just the dog within of Evil Geniuses, like, we know that it's Dorgamo, right? Like, obviously, like, Dorgamo played incredibly well here, but the way that EG won the series was very impressive. So as I go through this, I just wanted to mention, like, for Sentinels, it's a really interesting situation they find themselves in. We mentioned this, of course, back at the Masters Madrid. Winning is one thing. Staying on top is an entirely different endeavor and a far more challenging endeavor. They go down 9-3 on the first half of Lotus. They then dominate their attacking side to win the game 13-10. At this point, you're thinking, wow, big collapse there from Evil Geniuses. There's no way they bring it back. And especially when the bind goes 10-2, like, this point, what are the chances that EG win the series at halftime here? They've just fully collapsed on the game one. They've now gone down 10-2 on the binds. But EG are like, you know what? We don't even need to win defensive rounds. We'll just win all the offenses. And that's what they do. They themselves put together a run on the binds, and Sentinels were unable to adapt. I think that is one of the key things, really. Sure, Sen did well on the game one, obviously, but this bind, you're up 10-2 at the half. There's no way that you shouldn't be able to appropriately adapt here to close out a couple more rounds. But that adaptation from Sentinels did not seem to be there. There was discussion after the fact that they were almost feeling that they were trying not to lose rather than to win. And I definitely feel like there's an element of which they're playing slightly more individually than they were previously, not quite as well as a team as before. And, you know, it goes to a sunset, a map that Sentinels historically very good at, and they go down here to Evil Geniuses. So EG was super well drilled, and I was really impressed by, like, you know, the type of ideas that Potter had come up with and put together for this series. But nonetheless, the skill diff here immediately should be good enough to close out the series, but it wasn't. And Sentinels go from a position where they are winning Masters Madrid and winning everything they play to now losing to Evil Geniuses and on the verge of not even getting a chance to defend their Masters title. they will still qualify for the World Championship. There's basically no chance they don't. But Masters Shanghai is now very much in question. So as Kaplan says, we're obviously slumping and having a very hard time maintaining form. It's an exhausting and crushing problem to have. We won't stop trying to find our form. So, you know, obviously the talent is still there and the ability is still there somewhere. But this is maybe one of the things why having a very short regular season is quite challenging. I think it does in some sense punish the teams that started well, since started the season well, but often it's a consistent trend in esports and in sports, you know, start really well, then fall off a little bit. Other teams watch everything you've done, they adapt to your playstyle. Maintaining that level is a bit difficult. You then get in your own heads a little bit, trying to figure out what's going wrong, how we need to change things, and questions are raised. And then because the season is so short, they don't have time to adjust. They don't have time to come back. They're not playing, you know, double round robin where they're playing 10, 15, 20 games. They're playing like 5 games. Like, they don't have the time, and this might end up being a deadly series for Sentinels. And as TenZ says, they played better than us. We weren't able to close it out. We played not to lose instead of to win. And even as Zelsis says, very disappointed on a level of play recently. It feels like we are constantly fighting ourselves, which is a very interesting way to phrase things, that are maybe even in the game, but also out of the game. They are not quite feeling on the same page, let's say, as to how to get back to the level they need to be at. The major implication of this is, where do we go from here? Because usually teams losing games in the regular season, it's like, you know, whatever. They'll get to the playoffs anyway, then they'll get, you know, and then we'll see what happens at the playoffs. Now, obviously the playoffs aren't far away, but the important part is they might not even get there, right? And whether we see another thing with Sentinels where they win Masters, as they did back in Reykjavik, and then they don't do much for the next couple of years, like, I think it's too early to say this. But it certainly is a narrative that's already being spun, and you can understand it. And this is the current situation, right? So these are the matches still to come. Sentinels' next game, by the way, is against Loud. Then they play Furia. But these are the groups right now. And this is crazy, because Sentinels are now rock bottom of their group. They're 2-2. If they beat Loud, which they need to 100%, and if they beat Furia, they'll be 4-2 with a chance. But NRG, they're 3-1, and NRG still are yet to play EG and 100T, so, you know, it's still not guaranteed. But on paper, you look at Group A, you look at these teams, you think, well, you know, often a lot of these guys are still yet to play teams they should be beating, and you only get through if you are top 3, maybe top 4. Like, if Loud, as we said yesterday, if Loud and Evil Geniuses lose out, and they, you know, if EG gets stuck at 1 win and Loud only get 1 win, then there will be 4 teams from Group A that make it. 1100T should be at this point basically guaranteed lock-in spots. But there is a very good chance right now, based on that result yesterday, that Sentinels don't even make the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, then they can't make it to Masters Shanghai. So they need to emphatically defeat Loud and Furia in their upcoming series, and then they need to effectively hope that many of the other results go their way. So very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.